Mimi Syed is an emergency medicine physician. She's volunteered in Gaza and she's advocated for Palestinians in the US Congress. She joins us now from Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands. Really good to have you with us, Doctor. Let's start with the IPC, the hunger monitor, declaring essentially that famine is unfolding in Gaza. From what you've witnessed in the enclave, would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, the images coming out of Gaza right now are reminiscent of the Holocaust. I mean, that's the only thing you can compare it to. This is the biggest starvation campaign, the deliberately, systematically imposed starvation campaign since World War II, since the Holocaust. The healthcare workers themselves, I've heard from so many of my colleagues that I worked very closely with, and they're passing out when they're trying to take care of patients because they are so starved. I mean, I was just looking at your own journalist there in Deir al-Balah. I met him when I was there. I remember what he looked like. He did not look like that. He himself is emaciated. So the NGO workers, NGOs have made statements, just recently saying they can't even feed their own staff. So I can't even imagine what the rest of Gaza is going through. I'm receiving, voice notes from one of my colleagues that I work so closely with saying that she's just praying to die at this point. That's very profound. If you just think about it, she's not praying for help, she's praying for death, because it's more comforting than what they're enduring right now for the past 2 years.
Meantime, we've got quite a dangerous and haphazard method of aid delivery happening at the moment. We've got sporadic airdrops happening in various parts of the enclave at unspecified times. We've still got the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation centres, just 4 across the enclave, again distributing aid, but we're seeing many people being killed on a daily basis who are trying to collect this aid. What is the solution, in your view, to alleviating this famine that's been declared?
Yeah, I mean, these, the GHF and then the airdrops, these are just more ways of dehumanizing and killing more Palestinians. The GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it's almost comical. I've said this before. They have the word humanitarian in their name, and they are anything but humanitarian. Look, distributing aid requires neutrality, and these organizations and this method of airdropping is just not that. Anytime you drip feed a population that's been starved for a prolonged period of time in such a large population, you can't have 1 or 2 areas of aid being distributed. This needs to be distributed unlimited, just like the UN was doing, tried and tested for the past decades. They've been very successful at distributing aid, but the way it's happening now is, airdrops, for example, just now that started is just another distraction. They're deadly, they are inefficient, they're insufficient. The amount of aid going in is not nearly enough of what's needed. What we're seeing now are these airdrops going into red zones where people can't even get to, or it's dropping in the sea. We have people, clamoring over each other because one drop that they have access to, and everybody wants that package. That's just not a humane way of passing out aid. What needs to happen is the UN needs to take over, and this rhetoric that the Israeli government and GHF keeps saying is that the UN is not distributing the aid, it's just sitting there. This is just a very mendacious and sick, act that they continue to do, because everybody knows that Israel controls everything. That includes the convoys going in. That means the roads that the UN needs to have access to, the warehouses that they have to store the aid in. When the UN themselves are being bombed and their warehouses are being bombed, it's nearly impossible to distribute the aid. So that needs to be demilitarized. That needs to be taken out of the military's hands and given back to a neutral party, which is the UN. They've shown us that they can do this. And another thing to mention is, Israel has a policy of starvation, and they know very well, because of World War II, what's going to happen. And what's happening to babies now is refeeding syndrome. You cannot starve a population for a prolonged period of time and just suddenly feed them. There are so many complications that can happen, derangements of electrolytes, cardiac arrhythmias, potentially fatal. And we've actually seen this already in infants. Refeeding needs to happen under medical supervision, which is not happening right now. And Israel knows this. They have a starvation policy. We saw this during World War II, during the Holocaust. There needs to be unlimited aid allowed in. There needs to be a sustained and permanent ceasefire. And other countries, I want to remind you that in May, the UK, France, and Canada made a joint statement that they would be taking concrete action if Israel did not have a sustained ceasefire and if they didn't lift the restriction of aid. Where is that concrete response? We have yet to see it. We need to have concrete reactions. We need countries to take action and not just empty promises.
Yes, and we know the criticism coming from all corners of the globe is being sharpened now as people around the world are being subjected to the horrifying images of dead, starving children and babies. Are you disappointed that it's taken this long for much of the world community to really sharpen their criticisms of Israel and threaten action?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that at least there's a change. I know that there's a change in media, certainly, and it's changing. However, it's too little too late. I mean, we need action. We don't need just empty promises. Again, we need recognition of a Palestinian state, the UK announced today, but we also need action to match it. We need to bring solid action that's going to make sustained changes and not just talk. That's what I'm disappointed in. And I think that the rest of the world is sick and tired of seeing these images coming out and no one doing a thing about it.
Okay, Dr. Mimi Syed, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.